Coach Woodman, thank you for joining me today. For people who don't know who you are or anything about your program, can you please take a second to explain to them kind of your history and your current program?
Sure. My name is Jason Woodman. I'm the head coach at Fairmont State University. We're a Division II school in Fairmont, West Virginia. We're just about to begin our eighth season here. We've been here for 7 years now. I was born and raised here in Fairmont, so this is home for me. I've been able to, throughout my career, coach at pretty much every level, starting out of high school, and going all the way up to Division One, the biggest college scenes you could think of, and now back down to Division Two, where I think is home for me. With the situation we're in and the things, the aspirations and goals for my career right now, I think it's the place we're supposed to be. And it's like I said, it's year 8. We've changed the program around. What our main goal when we got here was to add some validity back to our program, and we've been able to have some success over the last few years. And I think we're doing that. The challenge with that now is obviously early on. I felt like we could sneak up on people, and now we've had some success. There's no sneaking up on anybody anymore.
Okay, Coach. And you said you've been in the big D1 and you kind of worked, you were at LSU and Florida State for a while. And you've had the opportunity to work with a lot of good coaches throughout your career, not just there, but other places. I mean, what have
Mm-hmm.
kind of been your biggest takeaways from working with people like Coach Bowden, Coach Fisher, and Coach Saban?
I think that there's different aspects that I kind of feel like I picked up from each one of them. When you start thinking about specifics, you think of when you talk about Jimbo, you're probably the most football knowledge that I have ever been around. And you talk about Coach Saban, just his work ethic and the way that he operated everything at such a high level, and the things he expected out of everybody around him, from the equipment managers to the coordinators. It was always businesslike, and it just was on task. It seemed at all times, and he expected you to be there. Kind of held you along those lines. With Coach Bowden, obviously the faith and the family aspect of a program was something that he was just phenomenal to be around. I always tell people you can read books on these guys, and you can even listen to people speak about them, but to actually be in the buildings with them every day, that's when you really start picking up stuff that I feel like has helped me down the line. Just being able to be in certain situations and either replay back in your head or kind of make a mental note for anything leading, in the future, that this is how I would handle a situation, or this is how it was handled. Maybe I wouldn't have handled it that way, but it worked out better or worked out worse, or just to be around those guys. It's astronomically beneficial. I can't explain how much I've learned from mostly Jimbo, because I was with him the most, was with him for the longest. And football wise, like I said, he's probably the fastest talking, most knowledgeable person that a lot of people have ever been around.
From there, I kind of want to move into kind of what stuff you guys do at Fairmont State. First, and like we talked a little bit about this, is what does your practice look like in terms of structure, time, um, setup, energy, stuff like that?
Yeah, I think for us, one of the main keys, anytime we talk about our practices, we're very flexible. We're always able to adapt to whatever we need to get done. We have a basic structure where we come out with a pre-practice, some form of a specialist period to kind of get our special teams and the guys, moving around, kicking the football, catching the football. We think that's very important to do every day. And then we go into our basic stretch period. But our basic kind of format would be the beginning part of practice, including stretch. And then we try to go to either a special team immediately, and then go to our indie work, and then hit our full group sessions as we have to. And then somewhere along those full group sessions, we throw our second special team section in. It's big for me to kind of keep things moving. I don't want to get stagnant into one situation. Even with our scouts and our ones versus one stuff, I try to keep it as sporadic as you can. We do a best on best section every single day, if not two. We try to do as many ones-on-ones as we can, just for the speed of things. But then we also slow it down in other periods too, and try to get some scout work where we can be more detailed. And if we have to walk through stuff to install it, we do. But again, we're very flexible. A lot of times I go into the defensive staff or to the coordinator and say, all right, what do you need today? And, there's times at practice where offensively we're doing probably 40 minutes of indie, but on the defensive side, while we're doing indie periods, they're working full group session stuff. So we're very flexible. But if I was to speak on a general term, we like to go the beginning part of practice, then a special team and indie section, and finish with whatever full unit or group stuff we can do.
Within that practice, is there anything unique or anything that you prioritize frequently during your practice?
I don't think there's anything that's extremely unique. Again, I've been around a lot of practices, a lot of practice setups. So I think that a lot of it is basic stuff. I mean, there's only so much you can do in a practice. The one thing that we try to do offensively is we try to work, not necessarily full indie all the time. We'll try to group our positions a lot. So obviously, for an example, we're going to get our quarterbacks working with every skill group before we go to a group session. You're going to get tight ends and O-line working together before they go into their indie periods. Same with the defense. We do as much safeties, corners, linebackers, corners, whatever. We try to get two groups together and try to do in a smaller setting, not necessarily an individual group, but we try to work one or two together before we go into a full unit.
What do you find within practice the most important situations to practice? Is it goal line? Is it 2-minute offense? Like, what situations do you find your offense and your defense working the most throughout a practice?
I think for me, we talk a lot about being efficient in situations. So our two most important through the week is our third down and our red zone sections. We do, I would say we spend probably a good part of 2 whole days through the week just working on third down and red zone. And I just feel like offensively, and defensively, third down's the money down. A lot of people say that. And we try to practice as many different situations, down and distances in third down period and in the red zone. We probably scheme up a little bit more in the red zone, which again takes more reps and more time. But those are the two main situations that we feel like are, probably the most important, along with all the other ones. We build in a goal line situation through the week, whether it's beginning of the week, middle of the week, or if we include it in a red zone. That's obviously important. And our first, second down session is important too. But when you're talking about a specific situation for us, we just feel like third down efficiency is going to win and lose football games. And when you get in the red zone, you got to make those opportunities count too on both sides of the ball. So those are the two that we focus on the most.
Now, within that, how heavily are those scripted? Obviously, you're going to script those, but is there any point where those aren't scripted and you kind of want to just test some stuff and play some stuff by feel, or is it 100% scripted?
For us, I think, we start out scripting it with a large amount of stuff, and any idea we have, we're gonna script it up, try to draw it up, see if we think it'll work. But a lot of it comes down to, can you guys do it? And if we don't script it, then for me, it's hard for me to kind of keep track of that also. I mean, when you get in the red zone, of course, you're going to do, unless you're in a tight situation or you're in a specific down and distance, for me, there's probably 50% of the red zone stuff is what's worked to get us to the red zone. So a lot of that's basic first, second down stuff. But there's also, times or matchups that you like to work in down and distances, in yard line situations in that red zone that I think are important. And we try to script those more than we do anything else, because we feel like on our first and second down practice days, we can get a lot of that basic stuff down. So I don't necessarily need to go and script our basic calls in the red zone. But we do, when we go red zone, especially at the beginning of it, before we shrink the package down, everything's scripted because we want to hit these specific things and see if they'll match into our regular down distance calls.
Now I kind of want to move kind of off the field. First thing I want to talk to, and I like picking coaches' brains about this, is how have you installed culture at the school you're at?
Well, it's tough. That's probably the toughest thing that you have to go through as a head coach is there, and there's a lot of different reasons why. I think the first reason that it's hard is you have to find the right guys to be around you. You have to find the right coaches first that kind of believe what you believe and know how to go about carrying that business-like setting every day, and what the expectation looks like and what the accountability looks like. That's probably the hardest thing when you're talking about installing culture. You can't do it alone. Like, you have to be able to have guys around you. As the head coach, you also have to realize that not everybody's going to agree with you, not everybody's going to like you, uh, but you have to make sure that you're firm in how you want to conduct everything. And there's going to be challenges up and down. You're going to have to tell good kids and good players that they need to find another school because they're just not doing the things that you feel like it takes to set the culture right. And those, once you find the coaches, then you got to find the players, and that's even a tougher thing because with today's kids, you have kids coming from all over the place. You have kids who are brought up many different ways, and you have to be able to kind of channel and funnel that main idea and those main guidelines and stay firm to them, no matter what the situation is. That's been the toughest thing for me is, finally, I can remember as an assistant coach just walking into the head coach and going, we need to get rid of him, him, and him, because they're not going to do this, this, and this. And thinking, well, why aren't we just calling them in and telling them see you later? Well, there's more to it. When you're talking about culture, there's times where you got to pick a kid up, pat him on the rear end, and say, hey, dude, we got to change this, and give him a chance. And then there's other times where you got to say, hey, we're doing it this way. You're not. You need to find another school to go to. And I think it's been tough, and it's a ongoing thing as well. Once you get it set, it doesn't change. You have to keep going, and you'll see, good teams go bad fast. It's hard to get that culture where it is, but it's even tougher to keep that standard there. And that's been our biggest struggle lately is maintaining those standards and those accountability issues and keeping our kind of what we expect, our expectations at a high level.
Kind of continue with that. What do you look for when you're hiring staff? How much does that culture factor into that? And then what else are you looking for on top of that?
Well, again, I think a lot of it's like, it's almost like recruiting. It's not always going out and finding the best coach you can find. It's finding a good coach who, especially at our level, we don't pay well. So, I can find tons of good coaches, but when I tell them what their salary is, they're like, no, thanks, coach. I can't do it. So for us, it's almost like recruiting. You have to find the right kind of knowledge of the game. You have to find the right attitude of the guy, and you have to make sure the situation fits for him. And it's tough. I can remember as a young coach too, when I was a graduate assistant, I would see all these jobs pop up on the football scoop, and first thing I would do is send my resume, and I couldn't understand why I didn't hear back from anybody. Well, you have to know somebody. You have to know that person's kind of mentality. And it's not always about who the best coach is. On all those jobs, I'm like, if I just get an interview, I guarantee I get the job. Well, I never even got a phone call back, and I couldn't figure out why. Well, when you're on this side, now you start figuring it out. There's more to it than that. You have to be able to count on the person. You have to be able to walk in a room, agree to disagree, and then walk out and agree to agree. And that's hard to find sometimes. It's just it's more than X's and O's. It's more than, hey, recruiting ties. There's a ton of stuff that goes into it. It's just you got to find the right guy for the situation.
What do your staff meetings look like? For like your actual in person with your entire staff, what does that structure of that look like?
For us, it's we don't. I don't want to spend a ton of time in staff meetings, especially when you're game prepping. So basically, what we do is we come in and I try to have an itinerary and a list of things that we need to hit as quickly as we can, and usually it's, hey, here's what's going on. Here's what we need to talk about. Or we're updating situations or looking forward to whatever's coming down the road for us. But a lot of times it's me giving information, and then I try my best to end it with, okay, I need input from everybody. I think it's very important that you give every guy on your staff a chance to talk. A lot of times they won't. A lot of times they don't say anything, but I can remember as an assistant coach wanting to be able to at least say something if it came up. And I think that's very important in our staff meetings. We try to make it as short and direct as we can. I think that's probably one of the things I picked up from Jimbo is I talk super fast. And I know there's times we have staff meetings and 2 days later I get questions about what we talked about in a staff meeting. And I'm like, guys, you have to be able to move fast. Like, take notes, write everything down, and let's go. Because obviously during the season, we're trying to game plan. We're trying to get ready for practice that day or doing whatever. At our level too, I know, for us, we have so many different hats we wear. We're checking on guys in the weight room. We're checking on class checks. We're doing, whatever administrative stuff we have to do, whether it's compliance, recruiting, whatever. So again, not try to take time away from the stuff that's really important, which is game planning, getting ready for an opponent. But it is important for us to get in there at least once a week, twice a week, however many days we can or we need to make sure we're all together in a group.
What would you attribute to the success that you have started to develop there? I mean, you took over a program. I think if I remember looking at it right, you won 3 games the first 2 years, and then since then you've been an 8-win or more program. You've made the playoffs. What would you attribute to the success that you have built at Fairmont State?
A lot of it's the players. We did a really good job of bringing guys in who would buy into our process, would buy into what we believed. It took a lot of trust for some of those guys. Was when you look back to our first winning season, we were 6-4 in year 3, and we come back and go 10-1 in a regular season the next year. A lot of those kids that were on that 10-1 team were also going through those 3-7 seasons, and a lot of those guys could have just chalked it up and left. But I think they believed in us, and they believed in what we had in mind, and they were winners. And that's really what it comes down to were the guys playing. We were putting them in positions to be successful, but ultimately it took them understanding that if they just listened to us and trusted us and did what we asked them to do, that they would win. And I think that's a struggle for any program nowadays, is just getting your kids to trust you with all the stuff that's going on outside of the walls of our football locker room. It's hard for kids to, one, they want to ask why. When we're telling them to do something, now everybody wants to know why. So you have to be patient enough to explain to them, and you're probably going to have to talk to them more than once. But you have to find that level of trust. They have to believe in you, and they have to believe in what we're telling them to do and do it. And I think that's really what happened. We had a great group of guys. We've had 2 or 3 great classes since then, and a lot of it was because of that. They just bought into what we were doing. They trusted us, and we caught fire there for a while, and it was a lot of fun. But it's all because of the players. It was all to them.
Awesome, Coach. And then, kind of last thing is, do you have any final thoughts? Anything that we didn't hit on that you want to talk about real quick? Any thoughts on current situations? The floor is yours, Coach.
No, not. Not to get too far off course, with anything. But it's just our sport is different than a lot of other ones, and I think it's important for us to understand that our players, they need to be heard right now. I think that as a culture in general, as a society in general, our players need to be heard, and we need to be able to promote any kind of peaceful protest, speaking out, doing whatever. We need to listen deep to what's going on, because we've been going through this. How long ago has it been since Colin Kaepernick started doing what he did? And I don't think a lot of people understood exactly what was happening at that time. And I know as a coach, I felt like our players needed to be heard, but I also felt like it needed to be the right time, because I didn't feel like people understood everything. And I thought that our players, if they were to kind of speak out the way that they really wanted to, I didn't think it would be looked at in a positive way. And now I think that with this happening, I think that now's the time. Like, we have to be able to give them the opportunity to speak up. And now's the time for all of us to rally together, and let's stop this. Let's make sure that we can do what we can as a sport, as coaches, as educators, to put our best foot forward, and let's fix these problems that we're having, because it's real. It's really there.
All right, Coach. I thank you for taking your time out today. I appreciate it, and I wish you nothing but success this season.
All right, Nick. Thanks, man. Have a good one.